Teachers, don't let anything or anybody bring you down. We are on the right path.
I believe teachers are the most amazing people in the world, the people who I respect the most.
Say this is a way we can make our classes much more enjoyable for our students and also achieve our objectives.
So bringing the world into the classroom, bring diversity, bring other cultures, bring other places, other real people.
Hello, a very good morning to all you teachers who are connecting today to the National TDC 2022 organized by SBS Librería Internacional. This is our second and final day of the event. And just to remind you that the event today will be divided into two blocks. The morning block, in which we are now, with 2 lectures, and it will last until noon, 3 lectures, and then we reconnect at 3. We remind you that you can write your questions in the chat. We are always reading your comments, and they will be answered by your speakers. Also, a reminder that to obtain the certificates, you must be registered, and all registered participants will receive an email with a link at the end of the TDC so that they can register their information for the certificate. The certificate will be awarded to participants who attend 70% of the conferences, that is to say, at least 5 conferences. Today we have 5 conferences. If you have not yet registered, please do it now. The link will appear here. It's appearing right now in the comments. We welcome all of you who are joining the broadcast. Thank you to everybody who is saying hi. I see people from Tacna, from Cusco, from Arequipa. Welcome, welcome everybody. Oh, from Moyobamba too, from Lima. Welcome. We are all welcome. Now we will start with a video from our organizer, SBS Librería Internacional. Let's go, Team SBS.
En SBS, Librería Internacional, estamos comprometidos con la educación y la difusión de la cultura a través de materiales físicos y digitales. Somos una de las cadenas más grandes de Sudamérica, orientada a producir y distribuir libros de idiomas, académicos y de interés general, así como bibliografía clásica e imprescindible. Hemos consolidado nuestra presencia en Perú con librerías ubicadas estratégicamente en los departamentos de Lima, Cusco, Arequipa, Trujillo, Piura, Chiclayo, Iquitos y Huancayo. Además de una librería online, donde presentamos una gran variedad de títulos que podrás recibir desde la comodidad de tu hogar, gracias a nuestro servicio de delivery a nivel nacional. SBS Librería Internacional. Soluciones para quien enseña y para quien aprende.
Thank you very much, Team SBS. Very well. Now to start the morning, we continue welcoming you. I see more people from Chosica, from Puno, Trujillo. Thank you. Thank you for being here, are being so active in the chat. Now, to start the morning, we welcome and thank Pearson Education for its participation in this edition of TDC 2022. Pearson is one of the world's leading learning companies. And to find out a little bit more about our friends at Pearson and what they do, let's watch this video together. Let's go, team.
What does it take to be confident in English? For your voice to be heard, for you to truly be yourself. It can be a journey of ups and downs. It's overcoming inner doubts. It's having fun along the way. It's showing strength and persevering. It's where you discover what you're really capable of. It's having the courage to speak up without letting the pressure get the better of you. Then the moment comes when effort turns to effortless. You are able to enjoy the achievement of all your hard work. The words flow with ease. Your pronunciation is natural. Your personality and strength shine through. You are confident, empowered. You've expanded your horizons. You are part of your new community. We believe everyone should have the chance to be themselves in English, to have a future brimming with opportunity, a future they have earned, a future they can own. Because when you can be yourself, you can do anything. Be yourself in English.
So with great pleasure, I'd like to introduce our first speaker of today, the renowned specialist Patricia Almendro, with the topic Sailing into the Performance-Based Approach to Language Learning. Patricia Almendro is an English teacher graduated from CONSUDEC in Buenos Aires, Argentina. She has completed postgraduate courses in England and in Universidad Católica de Salta. She has worked in Argentina in many state and private schools in Buenos Aires and in Misiones, teaching young learners, teens, and adults. She's been a teacher trainer, and an English language coordinator at various points in her life. She has worked for Pearson for 13 years, and she's now coordinator of the academic consultancy unit for Pearson Latin America. She's a certified master trainer for Pearson and is now doing the Harvard Managed Mentor, HMM, a trusted leadership development course from Harvard University. Welcome to the TDC, Patricia.
Hello, welcome everybody. Good morning. Thank you, SBS, and thank you, Pearson Education, for inviting me to be present at this event. It's a pleasure for me, and I hope everybody enjoys this session. This session is for teachers to reflect together, and I would love all of you to participate actively in the chat box. Please confirm I'm sharing my screen right now. Yes, hope everybody can see my screen now.
Yes, we
right?
can see.
Thank you, SBS team. So we have this moment to empower ourselves and be prepared to empower our learners. Yes, we invite you with Pearson to please take a look at the chat box and complete the link with your data, because with the info you give us, you will be participating in this raffle at the end of the session, where the lucky ones will get a graded readers ebook mini libraries. These mini libraries are ebooks online that you can use online and offline, and you have access to graded readers and Pearson English active readers to empower your lessons and your learners. And we will also be raffling today my Grammar Lab, this ebook that gives you access to more than a grammar book, because this is an interactive grammar book with a lot of grammar tips, explanations, functions and notion and rules, but also with a lot of practice. Yes, lots of practice in my English lab with my grammar lab. So please take a look at the chat box and complete the form to participate in the raffle. So let's get started. Today, our topic is sailing into the performance-based approach to language learning. And I have a lot of questions today to make you think and reflect on your own lessons and how you can empower yourselves and your learners to learn more and build confidence in English. So, what about sailing? Have you ever been sailing? Please tell us in the chat box. Have you ever been sailing? Do you like trips? And the most important question we have today is learning a language, a trip, a journey? Is learning a language like sailing into the ocean? What do you think? And here we might have different opinions. You can tell me, okay, it is a journey, but it's not actually sailing sometimes. Yes? Well, when we are sailing, we face different winds. Yes? The winds can change and we have to adapt our sails. Yes? Do you know this movie? What's the movie here? Let's see, because we are about to start a journey and I need to know how much the audience knows today. Do you know this Disney movie? Let's see. Let's watch a little bit.
Teach me to sail. My job is to deliver Maui across the great ocean. I should be sailing.
It's called wayfinding, princess. It's not just sails and knots. It's seeing where you're going in your mind, knowing where you are by knowing where you've been.
Moana, that voice inside is who you are.
Okay, maybe some of you know the movie. Yes, Moana. And Moana wants to learn how to sail. And wisely, Maui, when teaching Moana how to sail, he says, it's called wayfinding. It's seeing where you are going and knowing where you are coming from. Yes, and knowing where exactly you are. So if we compare sailing into learning a language, we can say that learning a language, it's also knowing where you are going, where you are, and where you are coming from to take your students to the next step. And when we say, okay, do you know in this learning journey where you are going? Yes, most of you, and we invite you to give us your answers in the chat box. Do you know where you are going? What's your ultimate goal? Where do you want your students to be by the end of the journey, by the end of the year? And some of you will say level B1, level B2, sit for an international exam, elementary level by the end of the year. Yes, some of you will tell me, I want my students to communicate in English. Yes, and this is all about learning. The journey of learning will take us to develop in our students those skills, yes, and give them content, but also check their performance regularly. That's why today we are going to sail into the performance-based approach and be ready, because there are winds of change or not. Yes. How does the word change make you feel? Let's take a look at our feelings when we read, when we hear the word change. And we have already said that when sailing, we need to adapt to these winds of change. And we can all agree that lately we have gone through many, many changes in education, yes? And now learning is no longer limited to learning environments or to a classroom. Look at us today. We are connected and we are learning. Yes, the same happens in the classroom. Yes, when we are face to face, but also when we have these online lessons with our students. So we have gone, our 21st century students need to be fully engaged. We need to be fully engaged and connected to learn, yes? But how can we adapt to all these winds of change, and how can we keep on sailing into the performance-based approach? Because what we want at the end of the journey, at the end of the lesson, at the end of the unit, and at the end of the year is our students performing in English, using the language confidently, yes? And Jimmy Dean said once, I can't change the direction of the wind, but I can adjust my sails to always reach my destination. And that's why we are here today, and we will be sharing more ideas on performance-based approach with you today, because we want all of us, teachers in Peru, thanks to SBS and to Pearson Education, reach our destination. So let's focus on why. Why do your students learn English? And I want to hear your comments. I want to read you in the chat box. Why do your learners come to your classrooms? Why do your learners today learn English? And I illustrated this slide with this John Dewey expression quote that I love. Education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. Throughout our lives, we are always going through these journeys of learning something. We are always learning. Yes, education is life itself. So there we have many comments. Why do your students learn English? In order to prepare our journey and to understand how to sail into the performance-based approach, we need to know why our students are sitting in the classroom, why our students are there in front of us. Connect with your learners. Get to know more about the why they are there and what for. Yes, what are their expectations? So when we are sailing, and if we have a look at this Moana film, you will find that Moana wants to learn how to sail. And there, Maui teaches her showing her that she needs to know where she is standing, where she is coming from, and where she wants to go. Our learners want to know too. They need to know. What is the learning journey we want them to engage in? So if we want to empower them, we need to communicate. We need to tell them where we are going, what is our expected outcome. Today, we will be talking about the performance-based approach. And in the performance-based approach, a destination is needed. Focus is needed. And we will see more in a minute. So have a look at this video.
We are all on unique learning journeys. Journeys that will never really end.
Because the minute we stop learning, we stop fully living.
At Pearson, our purpose is to add life to a lifetime of learning.
And we all add life differently.
Add opportunity to a lifetime of learning.
Joy.
Connection. Curiosity.
Vibrancy.
Adventure. Definitely adventure. Adds meaning.
And equity to a lifetime of learning.
Growth to me means acquiring new skills and knowledge that will help me make better decisions to improve the quality of my life.
Progress means constantly improving.
You gotta add flexibility.
It's all very personal.
The future we're working hard to create
is one that brings education to everyone in their own way.
During moments that really matter. Support.
Confidence. Fun. We've got to add some fun.
It's all just life, right?
We all add different aspects of life to a lifetime of learning. What will you add?
That's right. Learning is life itself. And in the English language is instrumental in achieving these big life steps. Yes, learning English, our students want to learn English because they know it's an opportunity in their lives. Yes, so of course we understand that they come into their classrooms because they want to equip themselves with the language that will help them get a better employment in the future. Yes. What else? Let's see. Give me in the chat box your comments. Why do our students really need to learn the language? Let's focus on the why. Why do we say English language is instrumental in achieving big life steps? Let's see. Some comments in the chat box. What do you think? Why do our learners want to get to be equipped with the English language for their futures? Yes, and we may agree here. Many of you have said for making friends around the world, for settling in at a new school sometimes, for connecting with the world around them. Yes, getting their first job, for a university place, migration, promotion, and probably qualifications. Yes, sometimes for qualifications and promotion and migration, most of the time, according to where they want to migrate, they need English. We want our students to be prepared for these big life steps. Yes, so we want to give them what they need. But learning and teaching English is not easy. We all know that. It's a journey that not only takes time, but it also requires perseverance, optimism, and resilience. That's why we want to give our learners support, we want to give them confidence, and we want to give them fun along the learning journey. Yes, we want them to persevere. We want them to be optimistic, to understand that they can learn the language. Yes, and to keep on trying, because practice makes perfect. So what do we need to do? we need to push our learners out of their comfort zone. Of course, doing this, they might feel sometimes vulnerable, yes? And what are the feelings we see our students going through? What are your students' feelings through the learning journey? Let's think about, because in order to connect with learners, we need to understand them. Let's reflect for a minute on our students' feelings. How do your students feel when they are sitting there in your lessons, when they are going through the learning journey with you? Let's concentrate on feelings, please. And you can write them in the chat box, please. Let's see if there are coincidences. What are your students' feelings through the learning journey? And this is why focusing on their feelings is that we see that traditional instruction is not enough nowadays. Yes? And what about your feelings, teacher feelings? What are your feelings through the learning journey? Yes? What do we teachers feel when we are going through this journey? Yes, sometimes same feelings students have, sometimes different feelings. Yes, these are obviously some of the feelings you were thinking about and you were writing in the chat box. Yes, these are all feelings we know our learners experience when they are learning English. Yes, and we need to give them support. Sometimes they feel frustrated, embarrassed, pressured, foolish, imperfect, misinterpreted. Yes, so sometimes they feel we don't understand them. Yes, and this is something we need to know and we need to be prepared to deal with, because we need to connect with our learners. We need to understand their feelings and give them the support they need. And what about us teachers? Yes, we also sometimes feel nervous, overwhelmed, out of touch, tired, stressed. Put up your hands if you do. We all do. Yes, it's what happens. It's life. Yes, and we also need support, and that this is why SBS and Pearson are here with you today, because we know we teachers need support. Yes, and we need to understand how we feel and find out solutions. Teachers, traditional instruction may not be enough for our 21st century learners. Yes, to be fully engaged, to take ownership of their work, to activate their higher order thinking skills, yes, and to think critically. So active learning and performance-based learning is what we need into our classrooms, with formative assessment, with a lot of opportunities for them to produce in the classroom and to measure and to understand how well they are doing it, yes? So that's why we need to help our students. We need to connect with them. And for that, for connection to take place, we need to build our confidence and our learners' confidence. A good way to build teachers' confidence is getting together with a community, yes, and learning together. And what about students? How can we build teachers and learners' confidence? Let's see some tips. With the performance-based approach, what we can do is build our students' confidence with 3 very simple steps. Goal setting, growth mindset, developing a growth mindset, and giving powerful feedback to our learners. So what is the performance based approach all about? Yes, if we think about performance-based approach, we are thinking about implementing along with the traditional instruction, yes, but in a balanced setting, this opportunity of sharing with the learners where we are going in the learning journey, yes, as we have heard Maui teaching Moana in the video, yes, you need to know where you are going, yes, when you are on a journey. Well, the same happens in the classroom, yes, and with a growth mindset, developing a positive attitude, and at the same time, checking all the time and receiving feedback on how well you are doing it. Let's go step by step. John Hatie taught us that we need to have clear goals. We need to know where we are going, yes? And in his book in 2013, he said, simply tell students what they will be learning before the lesson begins, and you can raise student achievement as much as 27%. 27%. We do want to raise standards. We do want to raise our students' achievement, that 27%. So where do we need to start when we are starting this sailing into performance-based approach, into seeing our students performing at the end of the year and at the end of the unit? Start with clear goal. Clear goals, setting goals at the beginning, yes? So what we want to share with you today is that for the performance-based approach, we want to give you a program where we will have 4 principles, starting with John Hatie's principle of telling our students where they are. We need to understand the level of challenge we are going to give to our learners, where they are starting and where we want to take them. We will also see today how to engage our learners with relevant topics, yes? Then we need to develop a growth mindset, yes? And we will see today how we can do it and show our learners their skills. Let's plunge into the right level of challenge, please. First, understand the right level of challenge. Our learners are all the time asking themselves, how good is my English? Am I progressing or not? What do I need to do next? Well, teachers, we need to be prepared to answer those questions. We need to be prepared to give our learners tips. Well, you can use our global scale of English. Yes, with the global scale of English, you can really compare levels to the aligned to the common European framework. You can help your students see where they are standing at the beginning of the year and where you want to take them, and see all the skills that they need to develop. Yes, remember that it's a step-by-step scale that will help you show your learners where they are going, yes, and motivate them to continue. So tell your learners where they are standing at the beginning. You are now in A1 at level 20, and by the end of this course, you will be at level 30, completing level A1. Explain to your learners where they are and where they are going. But what about engagement? Is it only about the right level of challenge? No. It's also about giving them extra engagement. That's why I used Disney movie, and we'll use another one further on, because Disney brings this truly powerful combination of stories and characters that can be interesting to engage young learners, sometimes even adult learners too, yes? Then authentic material. Bring into the classroom authentic material. That's a very good way to engage learners and to give them that challenge they are waiting for, yes? Videos from the BBC or material that is really authentic? What about Financial Times into the classroom for business learners? Yes, but whatever is real. That's why Pearson has these partners, yes, because we want to bring into the classroom things that are real. Now, have a look at this. I want you to think about ideas that will help us build a growth mindset. If you have seen from Disney the Luca film, you know that sometimes we have that Bruno in our minds, yes, telling us we are not good for that. Yes? Does it happen to you? Do you sometimes have that Bruno telling you this is not for you, you are not good for this? The same happens to our learners. Our learners are all the time listening to Bruno saying, this is too difficult. Yes, I am not progressing. I am not learning. So how can we build confidence? We need to build in our learners a growth mindset. Yes, first, goals, clear goals, and the perfect challenge with engaging material, with authentic material. Now, let's focus on how to build a growth mindset. So take down notes, dear teachers, and pay attention to these 3 simple steps. First, we are going to give our learners lots of time for self-reflection. Noticed what I've been doing all the time. I've been inviting you to answer questions. But the idea is it's for you, individual. I'm encouraging you to reflect. Give your learners lots of questions and encourage your learners to reflect upon their own learning. Yes, and what is happening to them, about their emotions, about where they are standing, how they are feeling, what they are still not understanding. Yes. Second step in building a growth mindset, a positive attitude, and build confidence is, number 2, encourage learner autonomy. Remember that they are all the time feeling that they are not good at English sometimes. They have that Bruno there, yes? So we need to encourage learner autonomy. After reflection, give them time for them to practice alone. That's why sometimes practicing at home, doing some homework, reflecting, and having the time to do it on your own. Yes, and engaging yourself in learning on your own. That extra practice and extra exposure to the language will give me the opportunity for autonomy in the learning process. And finally, there should be a lot of instances for assessment, yes, what we call formative assessment throughout the learning journey, yes, that will help us sail smoothly into the learning process and provide feedback. Give your learners feedback from time to time so that they can really feel how well they are doing it and what is it they need to improve. So whenever you assess, try to have results. And for example, results that can tell you exactly what are your current capabilities in the global scale of English and aligned to the common European framework, but also feedback that tells you where you need to improve. So this is interesting because, for example, with Pearson tests, placement, diagnostic, and progress tests, you get this feedback, performance summary, yes? And you get to understand what is it you are doing well, in your level, at level, above level, and what is it you need to improve if there is still in the 4 skills, right? So you see, you get this performance summary that will help you give your learners all the information they need to move on to the next level, but also to feel confident in the language, because they need to know exactly what is it they need to improve. And here you have food for thought. A lot of information, yes. After students have done the test in 30 minutes, you get through the platforms a lot of information to help your learners keep on moving. What is this all about? It's feedback, but it's also autonomy. You are giving your learners feedback, and you are giving your learners the possibility to see how well they are doing in the different skills. Yes, you are showing them like a traffic light. You can see all your students and the first attempt, the last attempt, and how well they are doing in the different skills. And you can help your learners demonstrate their skills. So here we can see that when we talk about performance-based approach, we want to help our learners learn more. Yes. And here I have a question for you, for the audience. Yes, for you teachers. How are you right now sailing into the performance-based approach? Yes, this is the moment for you to share your thoughts and reflect on your own learning. How are you sailing into this performance-based approach? And for you to think more and reflect more, and I invite you to write your comments in the chat box, I'm going to give you more information about the performance-based approach. When we read the experts, and I'm going to share where we have taken all the references on where we have taken this information from, the performance-based approach invites teachers to focus on the end in mind. That's why we talk about sailing into the performance-based approach, because we have seen that we need to know when we are sailing where we are going. Yes, and the performance-based approach guides us into including the end in mind when we are planning. Yes, to understand exactly what presentation, what practice, how to engage learners, focusing on the end. Yes, the end in mind. What is it we want to achieve with our learners, and how I'm going to help them demonstrate their skills? Because when we say that learners are all the time listening to their Bruno saying, I'm not good at this, English is not for me, and they do not feel confident. And when we say we need to help them feel confident and give them enough opportunities for them to show their skills, demonstrate their skills, this is the performance-based approach. We are focusing on the end in mind, what we want our learners to learn at the end of the lesson, the expected outcome of every lesson. So first, the end in mind. Second pillar for performance-based approach is using critical thinking. Yes, deep thinking and problem-solving skills. So we will invite our learners to be reflecting all the time. We will use a lot of questions in the classroom, a lot of self-reflection, so that our learners will be thinking about what's happening and developing their critical thinking skills, but also problem solving. Whenever your learners say, I'm not learning, well, okay, let's talk. Let's think about it. Yes, what is it you need? What's happening? Yes, so that we help them demonstrate their skills in the classroom. Yes, then we are going to provide the space for learners to have the opportunity of practicing and using the language. In the classroom, we teachers prepare our lovely lesson plans and our lessons so that students can participate and demonstrate their skills in the classroom. Outside the classroom, we give them applications, platforms, extra practice so that they can demonstrate their skills. And finally, we need to allow constant practice in the classroom and outside the classroom with a lot of learner autonomy, a lot of opportunities for students to practice alone, in groups, and demonstrate their skills. So let's go back to the question, how are you teachers helping your students sail into the performance-based approach? Another question, how are you teachers helping your learners demonstrate their skills? So these are questions that you can share your comments and your answers in the chat box today, or you can take them home and think for further lesson plans. How am I helping my students demonstrate their skills? And thank you for all of you that are participating actively. This is a session for us to think on how to sail into the performance-based approach. Remember, when we talk about performance-based approach, we're talking about the end in mind and giving the students a lot of opportunities for demonstrating their skills, reflecting on their own learning, and developing their thinking skills and their problem-solving skills. But for that, we need to have extra ideas. Yes, extra ideas we can give you today. Other ways you can demonstrate your learners' skills. You can give them the opportunity to sit for an international exam, for a Pearson English certificate. You can also give them opportunities to sit for progress tests, like benchmark tests, yes, where you will get this performance certificate, this performance summary on how well they are doing in the different skills. But give your learners opportunities to measure their skills, yes? So when we at Pearson try to help teachers build confidence and help learners build confidence, we are thinking about a connected program. We are connecting teachers and learners, giving them not only a course book, but also lots of opportunities for assessment with our platforms and also a certificate, but everything aligned to the global scale of English, because we know, knowing the lesson objectives and knowing the clear objectives you need to know to achieve the expected outcome is very important. And in that, the global scale of English can help us. So let's build our learners' confidence. Some more ideas. Pay attention.
What does it take to be confident in English? For your voice to be heard. For you to truly be yourself. It can be a journey of ups and downs. It's overcoming inner doubts. It's having fun along the way. It's showing strength and persevering. It's where you discover what you're really capable of. It's having the courage to speak up without letting the pressure get the better of you. Then the moment comes when effort turns to effortless. You're able to enjoy the achievement of all your hard work. The words flow with ease, your pronunciation is natural, your personality and strength shine through. You are confident, empowered. You've expanded your horizons. You are part of your new community. We believe everyone should have the chance to be themselves in English, to have a future brimming with opportunity, a future they have earned, a future they can own. Because when you can be yourself, you can do anything. Be yourself in English.
We want teachers and students to be themselves in English. Yes, that's what we want. And that's why we want all of you to embrace the winds of change and get ready with this conference to sail into the performance-based approach to language learning with a learning objective in mind, but having all the tools to really embrace the winds of change and empower your learners to build confidence and to be themselves in English. That's what we want. So we invite you to join the Connected English Learning Program and the community. Remember to complete the form to be able to participate in the raffle today for the mini libraries and the My Grammar Lab elementary access. Yes, and of course this is my email in case you want to know more about the performance-based approach that I shared today. patricia.almendro@pearson.com. And remember, yes, we have for you at english.com/GSC, you will find the Teacher's Toolkit and all the references on performance-based learning that I want to share with you today. And of course, you can also contact me and get some extra info, yes? So now it's time for you to ask questions, yes? Let's see. Questions and doubts about what we've been talking about today. Any questions, any doubts? No questions in the chat? Can't see any here. Teachers always need to practice the 4 skills in the class. Yes, that's a very good comment. We need, when we are lesson planning, we need to include the 4 skills. If possible, always something, a listening, a short listening, a reading activity, a writing activity. There should always be the 4 skills present in the classroom, or at least as homework in every lesson. Yes. Yes, there are different programs that we can use to help our learners practice the 4 skills. And of course, increase student-to-student interaction. Yes, because students really, that's a way we can build their confidence, give them a lot of opportunities to interact, to role play. Yes, of course, choosing interesting topics and topics they are interested in, right? Yes, sure. Yes, engaging learners in participating is very important, and varying the activities too. Yes, very good. So this is a moment where you can see, okay, what am I taking away now? We always try to use at the end of every session, what have I learned today? What am I taking from this session? Any questions? Any doubts? Yes. Well, this is a very good question from Mirka. Thank you, Mirka. How is this approach different from the humanist approach? You know that when we are teaching with performance-based approach, we need to include the humanist approach here, yes, because we need to connect with learners to build their confidence, yes. Probably, as I said before, it's not that we are not going to teach anymore the traditional way. We will, yes, traditional instruction will be in the classroom. And the idea is that we can mix and embed the performance-based approach with the humanist approach, because that's what we want to help our learners perform and sailing into the journey, yes, in a very natural way. So it's a good idea to use the humanist approach here, and there are many similarities, yes, and in these approaches, and it's good to bring it into the session. Yes. Let me see if I have any other question. Yes, the link to participate in the raffle is in the chat. Please, if we can share it again, SBS team. So yes, there it is. Okay, you have it. Powerful feedback is very important. Setting goals, giving students powerful feedback. What free materials are available to help students to improve their writing? Go into english.com/GSE and you will find in the Global Scale of English Teachers Toolkit lots of extra ideas for writing. You just have to focus on the writing skill. Remember, you have filters there in the Teachers Toolkit, and you have lots of free ideas to download. Yes? Excellent. Well, I can't see any other question. If you do, Team SBS, please tell me. Can't find any other. Thank you, everybody, for sharing your time.
Thank you. I wanted to read one more question I think you missed. There's one teacher that asked, what activities could we do to help our students share their skills?
Good, very good question. How do we want our students to perform, yes, and share their skills? For example, when you ask them to write, and for example, you can ask them to write blogs, and one another, they have to follow each other's blog or share a blog in the classroom and share their pieces of writing. The same way you can do it with videos. You can have vlogs, yes, with videos. So they share a space where they can share their videos presenting, and they can give the videos scores according to the topic, whether it is engaging or not. Yes, so there are many ways where students can share their skills, especially production. Yes, because when we talk about performance-based approach, at the end of the lesson or at the end of the course, what we want is our students to show their oral production and written production. Yes, so there you can have students exchanging, for example, when they are writing, they can exchange their first draft, a second draft, and give themselves feedback so that they can improve. Yes, so it's teaching them that they can learn from their partners, and that is building confidence. Yes, giving them the opportunity to build confidence, and at the same time improving their skills. Yes, so there are different tips that you can use, and students nowadays love recording themselves and sharing videos. They are kind of YouTubers, yes, so they enjoy that. And you can do the same with writing. Yes, try to find a way where they can exchange their pieces of writing and give themselves feedback. Yes, very interesting.
Thank you very much, Patricia. I think you have given us a lot of things to reflect on. Maybe that's what I personally take from your presentation, that we need them to reflect, but first we as teachers need to reflect. So to teach with the example, right? Teach by example. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please write to me if you have further questions. It's been great sharing with all of you. And thank you for your active participation in the chat box.
Yes, teachers have been very active as usual. We appreciate it. Well, continuing with our agenda, we welcome and thank the publishers National Geographic Learning for their participation in the TDC 2022. National Geographic Learning's mission is to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life. With their English language program, students learn about the world by experiencing it. Through their partnerships with National Geographic and TED, they develop the language and skills they need to be successful global citizens and leaders. So let's find a bit more about Nat Geo learning with this short video. Let's go, team.
At National Geographic Learning, we serve English learners by reflecting the mission and work of National Geographic in our programs. We are inspired by Alexander Graham Bell's original goal for the magazine to be about the world and all that is in it. And we try to bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life. If you look at our learning programs, you'll see that they're like workbook versions of National Geographic, filled with incredible photography, fascinating stories, and the real work of explorers. Explorers in particular resonate with learners because the explorer's search for knowledge and understanding is the very essence of education. At National Geographic Learning, we believe it's an incredible world, and we want to share that with students. We want students to be filled with awe and curiosity by amazing photographs and stories of their world and all that is in it. Because we know that a curious student is a motivated student, and we believe that a motivated student will be a successful student. With our programs, we're always mindful that we're not just teaching vocabulary and grammar. We're opening up the world to students who have otherwise not experienced it. Students in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Eastern Europe, literally everywhere. We want to help these students experience their world and develop their voices. Besides having great National Geographic content, we also work with TED Talks, and we are TED's exclusive partner in English language education. TED Talks are the single most widely sourced videos for English learners, popular both because of the ideas in the talks and because of the natural English used by both native and non-native TED speakers. Ultimately, the incredible content we have from National Geographic and TED enables us to develop programs that are relevant, motivating, and powerful learning tools that bring the world to the classroom and the classroom to life.
It's then with great pleasure that I introduce you to renowned British specialist and consultant Amanda Fonseca on the subject Reading the World Through Reading Routines. Educator due to an election of the soul, she sees the plurilingual education as a life conception more than a teaching methodology or a trend. She has lived and studied in Europe for 6 years, where she discovered her fascination for languages and different cultures, and also where she got technically trained by Cambridge, London, and Salamanca universities. Back to Brazil, she held strategic positions in the managing area of important schools from Sao Paulo State for more than 18 years. At these schools, she developed personalized bilingual programs, trained different teachers and coordinators, and implemented these programs with excellent results. These schools have become reference bilingual schools in the region. Her most recent professional experience abroad has been in Mexico, where she was the bilingual academic head teacher at Colegio Sara Alarcón for 3 years. At present, she's a National Geographic Learning Senior Academic Consultant for Latin America and an international consultant on bilingual education at Expandir. She has a degree in languages and social sciences, holds a postgraduate certification in psychopedagogy, and an MBA degree in people management. Welcome to the TDC, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that so kind introduction. Hello, TDC. How are you? It's just great to be with all of you. Thank you very much for the beautiful comments on the chat. I'm here reading them all. Thank you for this kind welcome. And I would also like to thank National Geographic Learning for this opportunity. And on behalf of Nat Geo, I would like to say that we are super excited to be with you this morning. Personally, I have to say that I'm emotional in here to see So many educators in a Saturday morning, ready to exchange ideas, to learn more. And as a Brazilian, I have to quote Paulo Freire in here and say that this excitement comes because I do believe we become teachers through this kind of interaction, right? We are not born teachers on a Wednesday morning, but we become teachers through this kind of reflection, discussion. So it's my pleasure to be with you today to talk about reading. But let's see what kind of reading are we going to talk about, okay? Let's get started, please. Well, what kind of reading are we talking about in here, my dear colleagues from different parts of Latin America? We're talking about reading the world. We are talking about a different approach to reading due to the challenges, the interests, and the profile of student we have right now. Okay, so we know that we have a complete different generation. We already know that we have different challenges in a post-pandemic education. We already know that the demands for these students, they are growing, right? What they what they are supposed to do with the language is completely different than what we were supposed to do in the past as students and the previous generations we taught. So if we know all of this, do you think we can keep approaching reading on the same way? Do you think we can use the same strategies, the same activities we had in the past? Do you think we can evaluate the reading understanding and the reading development of our students the same way? Of course not. So this is exactly what we are here for this morning, okay? To see what are the changes, what is this approach to the reading practice we are talking in here. And basically, we are going to do this by answering the following questions. Before getting into the reading itself, we are going to talk a little bit about what are we preparing our students for, right? What is the demand in terms of language we need to prepare our students for? Why investing on reading in English is so relevant nowadays? And why am I bringing this discussion to the table this morning? Because in the past, mainly before the pandemic, we were so much worried about oracy skills, right? And I'm not here saying that we shouldn't focus on them. We know for sure that they are the core, they are the foundation of the language. And a student that doesn't listen, doesn't understand, and doesn't speak is not ready to read. Definitely, we already know this, right? But why now? Why something that was already important is urgent right now? And after that, we are going to compare some literary and informative reading. And my objective is to provoke you to discover the answer to this question. Do literary and informative reading develop the same skills or not? And finally, why reading must be a routine in our classes? Because again, today we are going to see lots of tips, lots of ideas on how to implement reading as a routine in our classes, not an occasional activity that we will do just when the course book offers a reading practice, but how can we systematically develop reading in our classes as a routine? Okay, sounds like a plan for you? I can see through the chat that you were saying they are relevant questions. I'm glad to read this. So let's get started, my friends. What are we preparing our students for? And here we have a bunch of ideas we have been discussing for a lot of years. If you have been teaching for more than 5 years, you are so familiar with all of these concepts, right? And through the pandemic, we have studied a lot about them. We have been saying that learning the language needs to be a formative experience. And what is this? When we say this, what are we saying exactly? We are saying that it can't be a fragmented process anymore. It can't be just about vocabulary, grammar, structures, pronunciation, and isolated contexts, but we need to put everything together in a social, real situation, right? We are preparing language users. We are not preparing language learners anymore. Do you agree with me? Let me know through the chat, okay? We are preparing students to use the language effectively. That is to say, they need to master the four abilities, again, not in isolated ways, but they need to integrate the abilities in order to convey a message, in order to express themselves, in order to share their ideas, their opinions, their points of view, right? So for this to happen, as it is a very complex challenge, I'm not here to say it is easy at all. We need to bring content in English to the classroom, right? It's not enough just to explain the technical aspects of the language, just to pretend we are facing some situations. Remember this student A, student B activities in which student A would ask questions and student B would answer them? How real are they? When you leave your houses in the morning, can you say today, okay, I'm going to be a student A, so I'll be asking questions for everybody? We can't, right? So that's why we need to bring the world to the classroom through content in English in order to develop more sophisticated skills. Okay? And of course, when we bring the world to the classroom, we are bringing real context, real situations. We are allowing our students to learn the language by using it, and we are giving social function. So all of this being said, there is only one answer for all of these challenges, my dear friends, and that is reading. Reading will develop all of this. And why am I so sure about this? And this is not Amanda saying, this is not National Geographic Learning saying, but we know that competent readers, they are permanent learners, right? They are so interested on learning more about the world. They are curious. They connect what they are reading with a movie they have watched, with a conversation they have read. And this is exactly the profile of student we want to educate, isn't it? They are excellent communicators. So when they start speaking, when they start narrating something, when they start describing a situation they have faced, everybody stops to listen because they are funny, they are entertaining, they know how to articulate words, they are very creative, right? When they write their own stories, they have a lot of repertoire to use. As Miss Jessica is saying through the chat, they have words. They learn words and they are able to apply these words with a meaningful context, right? Talking about applicability, they are able to apply knowledge in different contexts. So what they learn through reading, they apply in different kinds of activities. They apply the information on their projects in real situations when talking to a friend. And of course, they are fascinating storytellers, right? So when we are having a circle time, for example, in the classroom, and we ask them about their last weekend, we know for sure students who read a lot. because they are able to express themselves, to tell us details about their weekend, to follow a clear sequence. So they are excellent storytellers. But if I haven't convinced you yet to invest on reading the world with your students, let's see more things that they can do. They can also use the language effectively, right? They are able to integrate the grammar they are learning, the vocabulary, the structures, the functions in order to convey a message. They do this process in an easier way, in a faster way. So again, we can see that their results are completely different from the ones who don't have this kind of opportunity, right? They produce more accurate messages. Of course they do, because they have repertoire, they have models, they have examples, they have references. So they are able to communicate in a more effective way. And why is that? Because they can make choices, right? From a very wide range of vocabulary, structures, again, functions. They can select the ones that make sense for the message they want to express. They learn how to appreciate high quality texts. And this is so obvious. We tend to say that our students just read very simple things. And this is our fault. I have to tell you this, because we tend to simplify the texts we are offering them, the stories we are reading, because they are learning the language. So we tend to think that we need to offer very simple things for them to understand. And in fact, this is exactly the opposite. They get bored. They don't like reading because it is too easy for the knowledge of the world they have. That's why the name of this session is Reading the World, right? Because we are talking here about bringing high quality information to be read with our students. I'm not saying we are going to bring things that are so complex that they cannot understand. This is not the point in here, right? But we need to bring things that they will be interested on reading according to their age, according to their interests. And in Brazil, we have a very special writer, I would say, Ana Maria Machado. I don't know if you have heard about her. She says something about this that is very, I think it is very important. She says that if I have read just one book, I have no way to compare it, right? But if I have read 2 books, I start to have elements to compare, to analyze. Imagine if I have the opportunity to read 10 books. So I will learn how to appreciate elements that I wouldn't be ready to see and analyze if I didn't have this experience, right? And finally, of course, because they have high quality input, they are able to write many textual genres, right? So they can write emails, they can write articles, they can write essays, of course, with our guidance, by learning the structure of the texts, definitely, but they can face this kind of challenge. This is what I'm meaning here. So why teaching to read in English is so relevant nowadays? Why do you think this topic that was already important before the pandemic has become something urgent? I'm bringing some data in here, okay? According to PISA results, I don't know if you are familiar with this international examination. In Latin America, our students don't reach level 2 on reading. What does this mean exactly? It means that they cannot be a full citizen because they are not able to understand the main idea of a text and they are not able to compare a text they have just read with a different text they have read previously. They cannot integrate knowledge, and they cannot analyze knowledge. This is very serious, right? We are talking about very basic skills in here. Of course, this exam is analyzing, is evaluating the ability of our students to read on their mother tongue, okay? So if they are not able to read in Spanish, if they don't have solid skills in Spanish, or in my case, in Portuguese, what do you think that happens with the second or the foreign language? So it's mandatory. We work together, right? We develop skills in order to prepare this generation to impact positively in the world, okay? Definitely, they need our help, they need our intervention, and they need different kinds of activities in the classroom in order to reach high order thinking skills, in order to develop more solid reading strategies that will prepare them not only to the life in the school, but will prepare them for life, right? To be, again, good citizens and to impact positively in the world, something that, of course, all of us want and expect. So how can we do this, Amanda? I hope I have convinced you so far, right? Please let me know if you agree with me that it's time to invest on reading the world. And I'm going to start sharing with you some tips in order to approach reading with these objectives in mind, right? Here you have a first practice. The first thing we need to consider, thank you, Teacher Milton. Thank you very much. The first thing we need to consider is language as a practice when reading. What am I saying here? We don't read to underline verbs in the past. We don't read to circle new words and check the vocabulary and check the meaning in the dictionary. We don't read, what else? To compare simple past and present perfect. When we say that reading is a language practice, we are approaching reading as an authentic practice that stimulates the use of language. So we are going to read to reflect about the meaning of what we have read, the social meaning of what we have read. We are going to read to discuss our different opinions, our different points of view. We are going to read in order to compare what we are reading with something we have read previously, right? So as we see in here, we are going to promote the enhancement of the possibilities of the language learner. So the reading is going to be an input in order to develop oracy skills, in order to develop writing skills, in order to produce something that is authentic to the student. I'm going to give you an example. Here you have a picture of one of my favorite books from Anthony Brown. I don't know if you know this writer. If you don't, I really recommend him for second, third graders, right? And it's called Things I Like. So students have read this book. Of course, the book is going to bring free time activities, objects, colors, food items, lots of things that this character likes, okay? So after reading lots of times, discussing, having circle times, show and tell activities, describing the pictures, the illustrations on the book, talking about Anthony Brown's life, many different activities, students decided to write their own version of the book. That is the one you can see on your right? But in this case, It's not things I like, they decided to write things I don't like. That's why the boy is so angry, okay? So when very young learners do this, they are using reading as a language practice. They are borrowing the meaning, the context that the author is offering them in order to say something that is true, relevant, and authentic for them. Okay, so this is the kind of approach we are talking in here. Of course, what about the language? Of course, they are going to study and investigate the language they need in order to express themselves. I'm not saying we are not going to work on vocabulary anymore, but this is not going to be the main focus when reading this kind of high quality texts with our students, right? And why is this important? Because it's our role as teachers, as language teachers, to develop reading fluency. And how do we do this? It's not a matter of just reading. It's not just quantity, but it's the quality of the proposals we offer our students, right? We need to read with intentionality. We need to read different kinds of texts. We need to read high quality texts with our students in order to develop these actions we can see here, because they won't say this, they won't develop this outside the school. They need us. They need us to expand their view. They need us to compare what they're reading with something they have read previously, with a movie they have watched, with a piece of news they have heard their parents talking about, right? To listen to what people have to say about the text. We need to offer students the chance to talk about what they have read. And it's not a moment to judge or to correct the information, but we need to allow them to self-express themselves based on their perception, their perspective, what they understood. I'm reading something on the chat about the level. This is exactly what I'm talking about in here, right? A student with more fluency, more reading fluency, will have the chance to go further on the book, while a student that just reads with us in the classroom will have a basic understanding of the book. And that is okay. You know why? Because when sharing the ideas, this student will have the chance to learn from the experience of a more experienced peer, right? So this process of constructing, of building meaning together, they need us, they need our intervention as teachers to do in the classroom. They need us to reread the story. This is very important also. Sometimes we just read a tale, we just read a fable, we just read a piece of news with them and we say, did you understand it? Did you like it? Okay, so now let's answer true or false, and then we are going to continue with the next exercise. What are the chances we give our students to reread the text, to understand it better, to establish deeper connections with the text and themselves, right? They need us to comment. They need us to express their opinion and their point of view. And this is a fascinating situation because when it happens in the classroom, normally there is a student who says, I didn't understand this. Where did you get it? Tell me the page in which you found this information. So they develop different perspectives on what they have read together, right? And of course, they need us to give meaning to a text, right? Basically, when we're talking about more complex reading here, they need our thought-provoking questions in order to understand, to infer, to establish different connections, to connect the text with their lives, right? Something that is extremely important. There is another tip I would like to give you in order to promote meaningful situations about reading the world in your classroom, right? You can have a list of characteristics. So you can build this list with your students, or you can bring the list with the adjectives you consider appropriate to their age, to their level. What is this about? This is about borrowing good expressions, offering your students the chance to borrow good expressions, to extend their oracy skills and their reading skills also. You know, sometimes, and I don't know if it's only in my classroom, please let me know, okay? But sometimes in my classroom, when I ask my students, when we finish a book, what is your opinion? How did you like it? It's fine. I liked it. It's nice. Why did you like it? Because it's funny. And period. It's the end of the conversation. So if we want our students to go further, to express more complex ideas, to read the world through the reading we are offering them, we can use this list. Why? Because when a student says, for example, that a book is inspirational, he will need to justify his idea, right? And then we will have the chance to see if he understood what inspirational is about, and of course, if they understood the text. And we can allow themselves to comment, to say if they agree with their partner, if they don't agree, so we can have deeper conversations in class, right? Something I do to challenge them is to say that they can use the word only once, right? So if I have chosen realistic, nobody else in my classroom can use this word in this activity. So again, I can add adjectives with my students in a circle time activity, for example, or I can bring a previous selection. I can have this list on the wall. So whenever we talk about reading, they have to refer until this becomes natural, spontaneous, and they don't need to use it anymore, right? But what kind of model am I offering to my students? It's time to provoke you a little bit, my dear fellows from all over Latin America, right? And this is very, very important because reading is a habit, right? And habits we learn from examples. We learn from references. And most of our students here in Latin America, they just have us as models of users of the language, speakers and writers. At home, they don't have this kind of access, right? So if we don't show them that we have our favorite writers, for example, that we have our favorite textual genres, that we enjoy reading in English, how can we expect them to develop this appreciation, right? For this skill. So it's very important to comment what you are reading, you know, to tell your students, for example, you know what, this weekend I thought a lot about you because I was reading this book. So, and remember something that happened last week? So this was exactly what this book is about. It is so funny. Once I finish, I'll read a chapter for you. So when we do this, we instigate our students, we motivate them, we seduce them for reading practice. We seduce them in order to create a community of readers in our classroom, right? They need us. They need us. And we are going to see some situations in which we are going to get involved on reading practices with our students, right? But I would really I really wanted to address this provocation for you, right? What kind of model am I offering to my students in terms of reading in English? Do I do this? Do I do this in front of them? When I present a book, when I say, okay, so today we are going to read The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Am I able to talk about Eric Carle? Am I able to talk about the story? Do I present this in a way that my students really get motivated to read the book, or I present it as an academic activity? So we are going to read, and after reading, I'm going to ask you questions. So please pay attention. Do you really think they will enjoy reading this way? I always compare this with going to the movies, right? Imagine if when entering the cinema, somebody would tell us, okay, so pay attention to the movie because after this, I'm going to ask you some questions. Or you are going to prepare a report and it's a graded report. Would you go to the movies next week? Of course not. We would avoid it, right? So this is exactly the way we need to approach reading practices. Yes, Ms. Rocio, in an interesting way, right? A formative experience is what we need to bring to our students, because we know that knowing to read is not only decoding a text, right? It's not just underlining new words. It's not just to circle verbs in the past, but it's to build its meaning. As writing is not only being able to copy, but mainly to produce meaning. So teaching to read and write, according to Joaquin Dolls, is teaching to communicate and to produce, right? And there is another tip about how to promote this in a meaningful way in the classroom and as a routine. Remember, we are talking here about routines, right? So there is a routine we like very much in Expandir, right? We use it a lot with the schools we have the pleasure to work with. That is, it's your turn, okay? So students read, they have reading practice through the month, and by the end of the month, this routine, it happens mainly once a month, okay? Students select their favorite tale, their favorite story, their favorite piece of news, their favorite article. We can do this with any textual genre, okay? And they record a podcast, they record a new version to the story, okay? They record an audiobook that they are going to share with very young learners, for example. So they have the chance to choose the book they are going, or the piece of reading they are going to work on, and they have the chance to choose the final product. They record it. It's their voice. It's their choice and voice based on the reading practice they had through the month. So when we start reading with them, it's very funny because they already start thinking about what they are going to produce. I just loved this story. I think this month I'm going to record this. So we teach them something beautiful, that reading is about socialization, right? We read to talk about what we have read, to share our ideas, our impressions with different people. So we show them that reading is a collective process, okay? And I had a question at the beginning of the session that was about literary and informative texts. Remember? Do you think they teach the same or not? What's your opinion about this? Do reading, literary, and informative texts develop the same skills or not? What is your opinion about it? I'm waiting for your answers through the chat, okay? I'm so curious to know what is your opinion. Mainly, why am I asking you this? Because mainly what we do at school is to focus on literary reading with very young learners or kindergarten and elementary students mainly, and informative texts with middle and high school, right? So they teach different skills according to Cecilia. They probably don't develop the same skills according to Roxana. Very good. They have different formats for sure, Mirka. They have different structures, right? So they develop different skills. And what kind of skills do they develop? Literary texts, they teach us the narrative process, right? So they teach the sequence of facts to our students. They teach cause and effect, right? She got sick because she was playing during a rainy day. So they develop these kind of skills, while informative ones, they teach argumentation, right? They teach description of facts. So as you can see, they develop very different skills. A strong, solid reading program would combine both kinds of reading, right? Would offer students the chance to be in contact with narrative, with literary and informative texts since the very first moment they get into school, right? Because they develop very different skills, and both of them, they are essential in the 21st century in order to be the kind of global citizen we expect our students to be, okay? So I'm glad to know you agree with me. Talking about informative texts, because the tips we have shared so far, they were mainly focused on literary reading, right? What about creating a did you know wall with your students? So in this routine, whenever students read an informative text, they had to choose one curiosity, something they learned about that topic by reading this piece of text, right? They write this information on a piece of paper, and we can choose how to work with this. Normally, we have a wall in the classroom, so they go there and they just stick all their new ideas, the curiosities they found on the piece of reading. By the end of the month, we have a full wall full of new curiosities, full of ideas we have learned through the texts we have read. So we show our students that reading is also about learning about the world, right? Learning new things, learning new topics, acquiring new information. And what we generally do in this kind of situations is to invite a different group of students to come to the classroom so we can present them everything we have learned during the month. So we motivate different students to read informative texts as well. We can also record this and send parents so parents can have an overview of the reading, of the informative reading practices of the month, right? So your students can see, they can visualize what they are learning through this experience. When we read as a permanent activity, and by permanent, I mean with a specific frequency, right? So if we say that It's Your Turn project will happen every last Friday of the month, I do this because my students expect this activity because they already know it's going to happen. When I do this, I develop different skills that I wouldn't develop if I work with reading as an occasional activity, right? Students learn to recognize the text purpose, something mandatory in the fake news era. right? What was the intention of the author when writing this text? Did he want to inform us, to convince us, to entertain us? So they learn to recognize this. They discover, of course, different strategies, new strategies. They have the opportunity to practice strategies aloud. They learn to manage conflicts, of course. They comprehend the text social function. This text was written with what intention, right? Where does this text circulate in real life? They learn how to perform expressive reading. They learn how to read, the tone of voice, the pause they need to make. They learn all of this and they develop autonomy, right? Something that we really need this generation, these new generations that are coming to develop urgently, right? So here's another idea in order to implement all of these concepts we have just mentioned. We can have a reading journal with your students, right? This works pretty well with all ages. And in this case, whenever they read something, they are going to register specific information. Of course, we are going to choose according to their ages and levels of proficiency. So they can write the title, the author, the genre of the text we have just read, their opinion about it, when they started, when they finished reading. They can rate the text. If they liked it very, very much, they are going to color 5 stars, or they are going to give a specific grade. They can write a small review. If they are very young learners, they can draw. If they are able to write, they can write some sentences. They can use, they can write more complex texts. They can recommend this book to another group, to another student. So imagine by the end of the school year, you have a whole reading journal, right? With all the reading experiences of your students. It works pretty well for them and for you in order to evaluate their experiences, right? The kind of reflections they started the school year being able to do, and now how they have improved, the different kinds of texts they have read through the school year. So it is just a fascinating way to make this process visible and tangible for your students, right? Reading is also an opportunity to plan for diversity, because nowadays we have lots of different possibilities in terms of having the same story with different levels, with different kinds of information, right? So I can have all my group reading, for example, Dracula, but according to their possibilities, their rhythms, and their abilities, right? Or I can even have them reading the same book, but I can challenge them with different activities. I'm going to give you an example, for example. Was horrible. Sorry for that. But I'm going to give you an example. One group can be drawing a different cover to the book, okay? So if this was not the cover, which one, what ideas do you have? So of course they need to draw and they need to justify why they drew, for example, a tree. I don't know. Another group can be preparing a puppet show or a drama time based on the story they have read. A third group can write a different ending, right? A new version. They can change the characters. So if they were not animals and they were astronauts, what would happen? So we can have different activities happening in the same class with the same text as an input, but the activities would be a challenge, an adequate challenge for the levels, rhythms, and interests of our students. So reading is also a chance to bring diversity, to bring equity to our classroom, right? Talking about drama time, it's of course a permanent reading routine we can have, right? And we can challenge our students by offering them the chance to make some choices, right? To choose if they want to prepare a puppet show or not, if they are going to change the name of the story, if they are going to change the end, the characters, if they have to include a song. I don't know, if they have to transform this story in a fable, in a poem. So according to their levels, we can invite them to work on different activities with the story, right? Remember that they will read if they have examples, if they have potent references. This is extremely important. Most of the times when having this session, teachers ask me, but Amanda, how can I engage my students? Because my students don't like reading. And there's no other way. My dear fellows, I really would like to have a recipe to offer you, but I don't. But there are two very important things: the example that we have already mentioned and curiosity. So if we don't make reading interesting, relevant to our students, of course they don't enjoy it. If we present it as an academic activity, as something that is going to be graded, as something that they need to learn because they don't know the relevance now, but it's going to be important in the near future, this kind of speech, it's not going to work with this generation and the next generations we are going to have in the classroom. And talking about examples, I mentioned that we are great examples for our students, but I would also like to mention the parental involvement in this aspect. That is extremely important. But again, most of our parents, they don't engage because they don't know how to do this, as they are not English speakers, right? So one idea, one tip I would like to give you is to establish a communicative process with your parents, with your community, on the reading practices you are offering. Here you can see an example of a school that shares regular tips for parents through Facebook, through Instagram, teaching parents what to do with the books the students take home, teaching parents how to select good books to buy to their children, giving them some examples of relevant authors to different ages. So once a week, they share this kind of tips, and it has been a very positive process, I have to tell you, because now parents know that they can count on school in order to motivate their children, right? In order to inspire their children to read at home also. We are about to finish the session, but I don't want to leave before sharing the seventh tip with you. The DEAR project. DEAR in here stands for drop everything and read, okay? And this is the practice I mentioned some minutes ago, in which we will get involved with our students, right? So in this permanent routine, when we realize that our students are very concentrated on something, that they are working on an activity with all their attention, we just say, drop everything and read. And we offer them a box, a basket, I don't know, but a beautiful, right? A seducing place with different kinds of texts, recipes, emails, books, news, articles, I don't know, different kinds of reading we put in front of them, and they have to select something to read. We give them 10, 15 minutes, no more than this, right? But it's a moment in which all the classroom will stop what they are doing in order to read, even us. So at the beginning, you are going to tell me, Amanda, but do all of them get concentrated? Of course not, right? But at the beginning, they are going to follow our example. So if they come to talk to you and you are reading, you're going to tell them, I'll talk to you later because this is so funny. I have to continue reading. I'll borrow you this book next time because it's fascinating. Oh my God, I can't believe it. So they will get so curious. I promise you that they will start reading and reading, commenting what they are reading by the end of this beautiful social practice. By the way, I'm going to give you my social media in a moment, and please share with me your experience with this kind of activities when implementing them, okay? The famous show and tell that all of us know, it can be a reading permanent routine. They can share their favorite books, no matter if they are in Portuguese, in English, in Spanish, no matter the language, right? But they can bring to the classroom their favorite book and describe the cover and talk about the author and tell us why this book is so relevant to them. They can bring their mom's favorite book, their daddy's favorite book. So this can also be a chance to talk about books and to develop this interest and this appreciation for reading. And my final tip, I promise you, would be the 3 R's, right? Read, reread, and recommend. So this can be also a permanent routine you can have in your classroom. Whenever you read something, you offer the chance for our students to reread it with a very thought-provoking question they need to answer, and then the chance to recommend it to another group, to their family, to the coordinator of the school, to a friend of the classroom, okay? So this is very important because when recommending, they have to think very carefully about the story and the person, of course, that they are recommending, right? Because if I say that this is a good book for Pedro, I need to justify. As you can see in here, they suggested a book from Anthony Brown, and they had to justify. This sentimental story will make you think about your brothers and sisters. So this is the reason why they are recommending this book, right? And finally, to finish this session that I really didn't want to end, but how can I choose, Amanda? I can see in here some questions about how can I select the books and how can I select the appropriate activities you have mentioned to university students, to older students. You just have to consider this. A good story is the one that makes us laugh or cry. A good story is the one that touches our heart. So start with this, right? Start small. Bring to your classroom stories or texts that will impact your students, no matter their age, based on their interests, based on the topics you listen that they are talking about. Try to think about texts and activities that will provoke them, that will inspire them to talk about themselves, to share ideas with the classroom. This is the perfect way to start promoting reading situations in the classroom, right? Start small, first things first. First develop appreciation, and then we can go with more complex activities, right? So I don't know if we have questions, if we have comments, but in the case we do, I'm all ears and eyes for you. And I would like to thank you very much for your active participation through the chat, by the way. It has been such a pleasure to be with you this morning. The first question we have, reading circles between parents and children could be a good way to get them involved in reading. Absolutely, Cecilia. This is a fascinating way to seduce even parents and students to reading context. So there are schools, in fact, that I work with. They promote literary fairs once a month, once a semester, in which they invite parents to experience reading the same way their children do at school. So the same kind of activities, they invite them to a dear project situation, to a circle time, to a show and tell, so they can feel, they can experience reading the way their children do. And of course, children just love to share these moments with their families. Mirka is asking, can you give some suggestions for university students? This was exactly what I was commenting by the end of the session, right? All of the activities I shared with you, they are adaptable for university students for any age, right? Because the thing here is about promoting a reading experience to our students that is reading the world about. So we can adapt the different activities to all ages. Could you leave us good sites to find interesting readers? Of course, we are going to do this. I'm going to share with you my last slide again. That is about the ways you can reach me. Just send me a message and I'll be more than glad to share with you apps, different possibilities to find the books. I have to tell you that all the pictures, the illustrations you saw through my presentation, they are from National Geographic Learning Materials. So I can also tell you some suggestions from Nat Geo to different ages, okay? So please send me a message. More questions? Okay, SBS team, do we have a second to share the last slide again?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you. So we can share. Here we go. Okay, so here we have my Facebook and my Instagram. So you can write me and I can share you tips, activities. We can focus on university students as you were asking. So please let's continue this conversation, okay? Thank you very much. Thank you, SBS team.
Thank you, Amanda. This was great. I think we feel inspired to make this experience more enjoyable for our students, right? And this is such a nice activity because it's individual and it becomes social. I love that aspect that you mentioned. I think we should start with our routines. I think we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you also to all the teachers. We have over 200 people connected at the moment. Thank you, everybody. And we're going to start with something amazing as well. I'm excited about this presentation. The theme coming up will be given by the renowned editor and consultant, Susan Halden. And it's on the topic, language and life. How learners are having to adapt to the post-COVID realities. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the amazing Susan. Originally trained as a drama teacher for UK schools, Susan Holden has worked as a teacher, teacher trainer, editor, publisher, and writer over many years. She currently runs a publishing company, Swan Communication, which is based in Scotland. We're going to welcome Susan to the TDC. We're excited to having her and to hear a lot about her.
Hello. Yes. Okay. Okay. Well, hello, all of you. I wish I could see you, and I'm very sorry about some technical problems, probably at my end, which have made the communication not as good as it should be. I'm actually talking to you from Italy at the moment, so I'm not in my own office, and the connection is not very good. So this isn't quite how I plan to do it, because we can't show my slides. So I'm afraid you'll get a lot of my voice talking to you. And I hope that we can have some pauses so you can think about some of the things that we would communicate if we were able to see each other. It's lovely to be talking to you. I was last in Lima, I think 3 years ago, and I hope to come back properly, not just on screen, before too long. I was asked to talk about the relationship between language teaching and what's happening to us all, which was a very good thing to ask me to do, because I've been thinking about it a lot, the relationship between language, which we all use, whether it's our own language or the language we're teaching, another language, and what's happened to us all over the last 2 or 3 years. And of course, the thing that's happened to us all is the thing that has made us do this. In other words, COVID. And I've been thinking a lot about how this affects teaching and learning, and also our use of language. So that's really the framework that we're going to be working in this afternoon. No, it's your morning, isn't it? Here it's afternoon, evening. I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself, first of all, because I think sometimes as a professional teacher, you only think of yourselves in terms of your professional life. And that's very good. But we're teachers, but we're also people. And sometimes I think one tends to forget that, because how we are as people affects, I think, how we teach, what we want to do in the classroom, and how we interact with our students. And if any of you are, as I am from time to time, materials writer, writing things, writing material, then it affects the kind of topics and input that we have on materials. So a little bit about me. And while I'm talking about me, perhaps you could think about yourselves as individuals and how your lives have shaped or are shaping what you do as teachers. So when I left school a long time ago, I wanted to be a theatre director. I was very interested in drama and theatre. And I thought being a theatre director would be a wonderful thing to do, because you'd be working with people, you'd bring together text and ideas and people and an audience and possibly a place, and you'd create something. But my mother said to me, "No, Susan, you won't." She was an actress. Don't go into the theatre. You'll never make any money. Train to be a teacher, because if you're a teacher, you'll always have a salary. So I thought, oh, well, doesn't sound very exciting at the age of 18. Anyway, I'll train to be a drama teacher. So I went to the Central School of Speech and Drama, where, in fact, Judi Dench went, and lots of other well-known people, to train to be a teacher. So I was in a place with actors, people learning to be stage managers and technicians, but I was being trained to be a teacher. And I went there for 3 years. And part of what we had to do was lesson practice, teaching practice. But the very first thing we did, in the very first week that we went to Central, we were sent to London Zoo. I thought, this is crazy. Drama, yes, teaching maybe, but London Zoo. We were sent to London Zoo on a Saturday morning, and we were asked to choose one animal and to observe the animal. And I can't remember for how long. I felt it was a long time. It was probably about an hour. And then at the beginning of the week, we had to come back and we had to show, we had to display, we had to act, if you like, personify the animal. And it was actually very, very fascinating because it forced you to look at the way the animal moved, the way the animal communicated with other animals and so on. I chose a penguin, by the way, and we then had to act our penguin, our animals. And I was praised for my penguin. This was before we went and did teaching practice in schools. And the very first teaching practice we didn't actually do any teaching. We just observed. We were asked to observe a range of classes, and we were given a checklist of things to look for, and we were asked to observe not just the teacher, but the pupils, the students as well, or maybe in the other order. And I was sent to a primary school in a very poor part of London, the East End of London, which I didn't know at all. And the thing that fascinated me was how the kids, how the children were interacting with each other, and how the teacher was encouraging them, or sometimes being quite strict with them, and the interaction between the pupils and the teacher. And when I then started doing teaching practice myself, I thought this human relationship between the teacher and the learners is very, very important. And I don't think this is anything to do specifically with teaching English or teaching a foreign language. I think it's basic to the teaching, learning, communication, and relationship that goes on. So for me, that was a very important learning lesson. I have to say that having finished my 3 years at Central and having been having qualified as a teacher, I didn't want to go and be a teacher in school. And I did various things. I worked in the theatre for a bit, did very sort of interesting things. Then I went off to Italy because I was interested in theatre history. And I went off to Italy to do some research, and I fell in love with the country where I'm sitting at this moment. And I decided that perhaps I could combine living in Italy and my teaching training with teaching English, like so many British people at that time. So I worked in a language institute in Italy for 3 or 4 years, and we had quite a lot of books which I didn't think were very good. At the age of 23, 24, 25, you know, I knew it all. I was an arrogant young teacher. And I thought most of the books we had were pretty boring. And a publisher came to visit the school, a British publisher came to visit the school, and he was asking the teachers, us, what we thought about the materials we were using. And I said, I think they're very boring. That we were talking about readers. And he was a very patient man. He said, oh, really? Well, if you think they're boring, why don't you write something that wouldn't be boring? You know, that was very good for an arrogant young teacher. See if you can do better. And I think this is a very good lesson. If you think any of the materials you're using, or maybe you have to use, are boring or don't fit what you want to do or your students want to do in the classroom, why not try writing something yourself? For one thing, it focuses your mind on the needs of the learners and your needs as a teacher. But it also shows how difficult it is. It's very easy to be critical about other people's material. So I did. I wrote three readers, and one was about the theatre, one was about fashion, and the other was about English food. Very strange. At that point, at that moment of time, there were very few factual readers material around. Everything was stories. And they worked, they sold. I made a little bit of money, not very much. And I went on teaching, and then I went back to Britain, And one of the things I had the opportunity to do was to edit a teacher's magazine. Some of you may know it, it's Modern English Teacher. It doesn't look like this any longer, but it still exists. I'm not involved in it anymore. And the thing that I learned from that was that as an editor, you're a sort of center point between people who are writing material and people who are using the material. And you have to be able to see material ideas from the two different angles. You also, as an editor, have to learn to communicate with people. You have to learn how to say, no, I don't want your article, in a way that won't undermine and destroy the person who has written it. Or you need to be able to say to somebody, well, that's a really good idea, but don't you think if you change it in this way, if you adapt it in that way, maybe it could your message would come over more clearly. And this thing of diplomacy, of knowing how to deal with different people in different ways, I think is part of being a teacher. Because I think there's a danger sometimes as a teacher that you think of your students as A1 or B2 or elementary or whatever it is, whatever label they have. But actually they're all individuals too. And one of the problems, I think, for a teacher is if you've got a class, how you balance the needs of some of the learners with the needs of other learners, and how you can get them to communicate with each other in a way that will benefit them all. So learning how to criticize, how to encourage is, I think, part of being a teacher. The other thing that editing this teacher's magazine encouraged me to believe, and I believe very strongly, is that practicing teachers, people who are in the classroom, have wonderful ideas. Well, they're not all wonderful, but they have very good ideas. And one of the things that has saddened me over the last maybe 10, 20 years is the sort of growth of the expert teacher, or the one who is a big name because he or she, very often he, actually, I have to say, has written a textbook that is used all over the world. And there's a sort of promotion of the famous names. Now, some of them are very good, some of them are good friends of mine. But I think one of the sad aspects of some of the changes in the language world over the last few years is the growth of the big names, because they sell books and publishers need authors to promote their books and so on. And sometimes the voice of the ordinary practicing teacher is something that gets a bit forgotten. So I would encourage any of you, and this is combining language and life, if you've got ideas, get them out there, share them with other people. If you are working in a place where there are teachers groups and teachers associations, I think it's very important to meet with other teachers. When I was first in Italy, I was very lucky because it was when in Italy teachers groups were being set up in most of the towns and cities, and teachers were meeting together to discuss, well, the idea was that they would meet together to discuss methodology and language teaching and so on. And as a foreigner and also as editor of a teacher's magazine, I was very often invited to to some of the meetings. And, you know, they might start off with teaching the present perfect tense or the problems of this and that in terms of language. And after a bit, they would be one teacher saying to another, oh, do you know, I've got this most awful class, this really difficult people, and they don't listen, and they don't do this, and they don't do that. And people would suggest various things. And what this coming together of teachers showed me was how, as a teacher, you need support from your colleagues. And if you can build up this feeling of support when there are problems, when either life or language gets too problematical, then I think you can help other people and other people can help you. And on a professional level, if you get the chance to go and observe other teachers, as I did when I was a beginner teacher, observing classes, if you can observe people in the classroom and just watch how they're coping with things, they may be coping with the same problems as you, and that can give you ideas, but it also builds up trust. And I think trust and confidence in colleagues as a teacher is really, really important. And when things get difficult, and I'll get onto the life bit in a minute or two, when things get difficult, as they have for all of us over the last 2-3 years, then I think support from colleagues, knowing who you can get on the phone to and say, hey, I've got this awful problem, and also support colleagues, is, I think, very important, and is part of being a teacher. I think you're a listener and a looker as well as a doer. That's probably enough of me, I think. So let's come to where we are now. And the thing, as I sort of showed you, the thing that's hit all of us in the last 3 years is, first of all, COVID. I'm sure you don't need a prompt from me to know how much life changed for all of us. It was different from place to place and country to country, and it hit some countries before others. I live in Scotland when I'm not traveling around. I live in Scotland, and we had a pretty strict lockdown. We weren't allowed to meet any other people. I live on my own, so I did a lot of talking to myself. We were allowed to go to the supermarket to shops, as well as we wore one of these things. And this is an example of how something in life, the COVID thing, changed our use of language. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've talked about masks very often in my life. Well, I did when I was studying theatre in Venice with the Commedia dell'arte. But a mask in everyday life is not something that I ever encountered. And it would be interesting for you to just take a moment or two, and if I were with you and we were in a workshop, we could do this properly. Think in Spanish or any other language of how language changed to talk about what was happening to us all. Now, I've got a friend, a colleague called Hugh Della, who works in London, but does a lot of work in mostly European countries. And he runs training courses for teachers in London. And he's very aware of language and the way language has changed. And he did a survey, I think it was 2 summers ago, of words like lockdown, and the kind of advice that was being given, the rules that were being given, the language that was different from pre-COVID. And it's a very interesting, and I can send you a transcript of some of it. It's a very interesting illustration in English of how, because of something that was happening outside, not in the classroom, but in the world outside, that was hitting everybody. And it was affecting the way we use language. And I'm sure it was the same in Spanish, in Peru. It certainly was in Italy and France, which are the countries I obviously know best. So life has an impact on language. Now, I talked a little bit about materials and writing materials. And if you think of the textbooks that you're using or the online material you're using, just reflect for a moment. How representative is the language of your textbooks, do you think, of the way language has changed over the last 2 years, 3 years? Now, it's an unfair challenge in a sense, because I know as a publisher and a writer how long it takes to produce material. It takes 3, 4, 5 years from planning to four levels of a course being in people's hands. But I think if you want your students to feel that the language you and they are dealing with in the classroom is alive and current and reflects life, as well as verb tenses and vocabulary and so on, then it would be useful to think of the changes that have happened in your L1, and then see how you can use the language in the course book to make it come alive, make it reflect real life. Now, one of the things that I feel strongly about, my friends say I get very boring about this, is the way conversations and dialogues are very often handled in textbooks or online material, because conversations and dialogues are usually presented from the point of view of language, giving instructions, agreeing, disagreeing, talking about the past, talking about future plans, and so on. And what happens in most textbooks, and any fellow publisher can criticize me for saying this, but what happens in most of them is there's the exercise number, then there's usually a conversation has been recorded. So it'll be listen to the dialogue and find out something. It's usually factual. It might be spotting a bit of vocabulary. There's usually a little photograph of the people having the conversation, but there's not very often any instruction in the teacher's book to look at the people. Look at the people in that photograph, speculate about them, because conversation comes out of people. Conversation is the coming together or the refusal to come together between 2 or 3 different people. And I think we can do a lot in our classrooms to encourage students to feel that language is alive and living and changing, if we focus more on the people who are producing the language, if it's a dialogue, than the actual language itself. And I think you can do this if you're using a textbook that does have photos of characters in it. You can do this by speculation. Ask the students to look at the photograph and speculate about those people. Who are they? Where are they? What are they feeling? Think of yourselves, for example. Think when you've got to do a lesson and you're worried about something at home. You know, maybe one of the kids is off ill, or you've got a problem and you're in a hurry and you know you've got to go buy some food before you get home. And this is partly on your mind, and that's going to color the way you speak and interact with other people. What happens when you're in a situation with somebody you don't like very much? Maybe you're all more polite than I am, but I know I'm very affected by the person I'm interacting with. Now, if we go to our COVID situation or our post-COVID situation, we've all been in a situation where maybe we feel very nervous. Maybe we don't want to go too near a person. Maybe we wish the person would keep their distance from us. And this affects the interaction, how we actually produce language, and how we react to the other person. And I think this is where it's useful to use the own language environment as a point of reference. You know, if you were talking to somebody using Spanish or whatever language at home, how would your feeling about the other person affect your choice of words, your intonation, your gesture, probably? I wave my hands about far too much. It's the influence of having lived in Italy and France, I think, a lot. But, you know, language is only part of the communication. And if you can do that with a textbook dialogue, a textbook conversation, get them to speculate about the people, get them to imagine that those two people actually don't like each other. Or maybe they do, maybe they think, you know, the other person is totally wonderful. Maybe one of the people is in a hurry. How would that affect the way they produce that language? And then you can use the textbook dialogue, injecting the personal, the life bit into the language to make it come alive. And then if your students are capable of doing it, you can encourage them to improvise, to change some of the language, to add ideas of their own, do a bit of role play, let them show each other. All of that takes a bit of time. And I know as a teacher that one of the things one's doing all the time is fighting not enough time. But if you can do it, it's worth a try. It won't work for all of you, and it won't work with all classes. But I when I've done it, I've found that a lot of students react very well to it, because they're being able to put in something of their own. And I think that as a teacher, sometimes we impose on students the things that we want to do, or maybe the exam syllabus asks us to do, and we don't allow them enough space. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today was the use of projects, because in lockdown, where so much teaching in every country has been done online, it's interesting the effect that this has had on teachers and students. Now, I've been with a group of teachers here in Italy over the last few days, and we've been talking about how teaching online from a teacher, what are the positives, what are the negatives, but also what are the positives and negatives for the students. And I suspect your reactions would be very similar to the teachers here. Some teachers have loved working online. They don't have to, get on the bus and go to school and so on. Others absolutely hate it. Most are somewhere in between the two. The same, I think, goes for learners. Some have found it's great. Others have found, it's a great opportunity to switch off your camera and not be in the full sight of the teacher all the time. But for me, it's opened up possibilities for how, as a teacher, whether you're working online or whether you're working with students in the classroom in the same physical space, how perhaps we should be encouraging students to take more responsibility for their learning. Now, what I mean by this is when you're teaching online, you can't, if students turn their cameras off, I don't know what it's like in Peru, but in quite a lot of European countries, a lot of students do just turn the camera off. And as a teacher, that's a bit difficult because you can't see them. You can't read their faces and so on. But if you make them feel responsible for doing things, then I think it can involve them in the language learning. And again, this would be for any subject, not just language. So one of the things I've noticed over the last 2 years is that some teachers have become very enthusiastic about doing project work. In other words, saying to the students, go and research something online and bring it back to the next lesson. It's something very factual, it's all sorts of things. a lot of teachers have done project work in the past, and I know most teachers have a sort of love-hate relationship with them. When projects go well, they're wonderful, and when they don't go well, they're a total disaster, and they take up a lot of time. But talking to teachers in not just here in Italy, but I was in Poland last week talking to at a Polish teachers conference, and the teachers there, some of them were saying, yes, it's been because the students can go away and research things on the internet and so on and bring back what they find to the classroom. That's a way of making them feel that they have as much input into the learning as I do as a teacher. And I think that's something to think about in the way that life has changed us all, that maybe empowering students, giving them responsibility for projects that come out of whatever is the main bit of the lesson, can be useful. And I think for teachers who are nervous about projects or feel that they're too time consuming, the most important thing is the planning. Knowing how much time you want to take the project to take up in the lesson, being realistic about how much time the students have, but also finding out what particular interests and skills they have. And I'm always surprised when I do this with a group of students. You know, there'll be somebody who maybe is awful at English, but is a wonderful photographer, or is great at finding out facts, or is a very good organizer. And if you're doing projects as part of a group, then the group management from the student, not from the teacher, is, I think, a very important way of building up their life skills, not just their language skills. So for me, project work is something that I think maybe has been strengthened by what we've been through in the last 2-3 years. Another thing I've become more aware of is the way language is used. There was a big conference in Glasgow, which is very near where I live when I'm at home. There was a COP26 conference where a lot of politicians went and, were very high-minded about preserving the planet and so on. And the Scandinavian teenager, Greta Thunberg, was asked what she thought about this, and it was a BBC interview, and it irritated some people. It made me laugh and made me think about how we can convey our feelings, not in normal words, because the politicians had gone, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll save the planet. And the BBC interviewer said, and Greta, what do you think about this? And she said, blah, blah, blah. And that phrase, the words, blah, 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 they said so much. There is a fairly self-assertive teenager commenting on politicians and specialists in a dismissive way, but in a way that made me think, they do just go on and on and on a bit, don't they? And this sort of capturing the way we can convey feelings through not the normal language, but the use of words is something that I think is worth spending a bit of time on in the classroom. Another thing that has emerged for me over COVID was I mentioned teachers groups and teachers supporting each other. I was part of a project here in Europe, which started almost 2 years ago. It was an idea of bringing online teachers together online once a week to talk about aspects of teaching. So not very different from any teacher training course. And it was interesting because I think there were teachers from probably about 6 different countries, mostly Central Europe. I was involved, a few other colleagues from Britain were involved, somebody from the United States, various people. And it started out that the focus of every session was teaching vocabulary or various normal things. What emerged, because people were being isolated from each other, was actually the need to talk with colleagues on a human level. And the weekly meetings became, I think in some cases, every 3 days or something. And there was this feeling of teacher support, not just how on earth I teach online, or how on earth we do testing, or whatever it might be, but building up a feeling of camaraderie, of teacher support, that one teacher can support another. And huge friendships were made from this. And it wasn't all serious stuff. It was quite jokey. I think glasses of wine featured quite a bit. But what emerged from this, for me, was one of the things that has changed over the last 2-3 years, which goes back to when I was a much younger teacher, a long time ago. This feeling of teacher support, how we need our colleagues and we need to feel that we can support our colleagues. So for me, that's one of the positive things that has come out of the COVID thing. And I think that if you're involved in teacher training, that gives one pause for thought, because whether you're doing training online or whether you're back to live training, what do teachers actually need, whether they're beginner teachers or trainees, beginners, or teaching for some time? Is it just the language aspect, or is it the life aspect of what you need as a teacher? How you need support. And I think anybody involved in teacher training needs to think this through. I've noticed, for example, that there's been a growth in online, they're usually called cafes, various organizations in Europe, they have a sort of meeting together on a first Thursday of every month or something. And yeah, it's talking about professional things, but it's also teacher being able to speak to teacher, which I think is very important in human scales. I'm slightly conscious of time. I wanted to come back to another aspect of life now, which is very uppermost in the minds of people in Europe, obviously. COVID was one thing. It's had an effect on us all. And then something happened at the beginning of this year, in February this year, which has changed, I think, the way we think about ourselves and other people. I was at a meeting in Poland in February, and the person who was organizing the meeting came in on the first day of the meeting with a very, very serious face. And it was the day that the Russians had invaded Ukraine. I'm obviously not going into the politics of all this, but this is something that in Europe we're all very, very conscious of, that the news is not good. And that was on the 26th of February, I'm pretty sure, of this year. And this was a teachers' meeting, and it hit all of us. I think it made us all more serious about what we were talking about. So we were talking about methodology, we were talking about materials, but we'd actually changed a little bit as people because we were aware that there was something going on that was not good. Just after that, on the 4th of March, I found on Facebook a post from a teacher in Ukraine. And this is what I read. 9 days ago, I thought that my job as a teacher was to teach English, simply to teach the subject. 9 days ago, I encouraged my students to use their critical thinking skills to make thoughtful decisions and draw conclusions. Today, this is the 9th of March, my job as a teacher is to make sure that all the children get to the shelter when the siren goes. There's a wah, wah, wah. Today, my job is to do my job so that tomorrow my students wake up under a peaceful sky. And I find that very, very, very moving. And it again reminded me of the fact that as teachers, we're here, there, to teach mathematics, history, language, whatever it may be, but we're also here as people, and we're sharing a world with our students. And if they can feel that we are there with them as people, as well as teachers, experts, whatever it may be, then I think this empathy is something that will help them learn and will also help us do our jobs. So one of the things I hope, one of the positive things that may come out of the post-COVID and post-horrible political things going on in various parts of the world is a feeling of solidarity, teacher to teacher, solidarity, teacher to student, and the realization that first of all, we're all people and we all know each other. And I hope that this can trickle into the kind of materials that are being used, produced in the classroom. But if you can inject into conversations, dialogues, this feeling of, okay, those are the words, but what is it that made you say them in that way? What would you do in your own language if you were feeling nervous, feeling upset, feeling worried? And how would it affect your language? And I think if we can inject this bringing together of language and life for our students, then I think we're equipping them with something that they can use outside the classroom and hopefully for the rest of their lives. So that's my interpretation of how important it is to bring language and life together. And I'm sorry, we can't have an interaction on this. SBS have my email, and I'm very happy to respond to any emails if anybody wants to send them. And as I said, I would hope maybe next year I can come and visit you all again in Lima. So thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Oh, gosh. Where can I find the chat? Okay. Right. I can't see any messages in the chat. I don't know if there are any. I don't know if I'm being stupid, but I can't see any messages in the chat.
We know that she's not being stupid. I don't think she can hear me. but we're going to give her some seconds so we can contact her with your questions.
So I think that's the time I'm meant to finish. Am I right?
Okay, I think unfortunately she's not going to be able to answer the questions. If she is, we are going to let you know. So I'm going to thank Susan again, as you guys have said, and we're going to make sure that she knows how much we all have enjoyed her presentation, her experience, and her thoughts. It's been amazing. Thank you, Susan. And all of you, don't go away, because now we're going to present the winners. Remember that earlier you registered for a raffle. So we are going to announce the winners now. So just so you know, this raffle is thanks to Pearson Education. They will contact the winners to deliver the prizes, which are it's digital access to the platforms. And I don't know if the team is here to help me and to say who the winners are. So we can say it. I'll just announce it, and then they will also post the names. Well, congratulations to Leslie Lamchero, Maria Linares, Cecilia Condori Rios, Susana Moran Mori, and Monica Sanchez Reto. A team of Pearson Education will contact you to coordinate the delivery of your virtual text. Well, or to coordinate I don't know if you are in the chat. Maybe you are. Congratulations to the winners. Yes, I will mention the names again. You will see them. If you don't see them on screen now, you will see them. I don't see them. Maybe you do. It's Leslie Lamchero, Maria Linares, Cecilia Condori Rios, Susana Moran Mori, and Monica Sanchez Reto. Pearson Education will contact you so you can get access to the prizes. Well, and now, thank you very much again to our wonderful speakers for their participation. Patricia, Amanda, Susan, and to all the teachers who have been connected. There have been almost 250 people. It's been a very productive morning. Now we have a break for lunch, and we'll reconnect a few minutes before 3 p.m. For the last two presentations of the TDC 2022. So see you later. See you later, everybody.